Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Igcse Biology Help. In today's video, I'm going to be solving the May-June 2021 Paper 2 Variant 2. If you want the Variant 1 version, I have uploaded it on my channel. And make sure to subscribe and like my videos in order to support this channel. Now let's start solving. Question number 1, what is a characteristic of all living organisms? So we know in these type of questions, we should be choosing part of the Mrs. Gren or the 7 characteristics of living organisms, which means that any characteristic that will show any organism is living. That is what's meant by the characteristic of living organism. So over here, sensitivity is the part of the 7 characteristics. Now, number 2, the bamboo and the chimpanzee are 2 close related species. What is the most accurate method of deciding how close related species are? Now, we know that the most accurate method is using or comparing their base sequence of their DNA. Now, anatomy and morphology were methods that were used before in the past, but they are not as accurate. So, the most accurate is DNA, so that's going to be our answer. Number 3, scientists discover a new species of animal. It has a segmented body with 2 pairs of legs on each segment. So that means that each segment, they have a segmented body with maybe many segments, and each segment has 2 pairs of legs, which means they have 4 legs on each segment. So that is the myriapods. Number 4, which part of a cell makes glucose? Now we know that the chloroplast, which performs photosynthesis, actually creates glucose because it uses the carbon dioxide and it uses also water to create glucose and oxygen. So chloroplast is going to be our answer because that is associated with the photosynthesis process. Number 5, the diagram shows some of the blood vessels and the other structures in the human body. The blood vessels shown are all parts of the stem. Now, as we can see here, the circulatory system is shown because you can see that there is the vein and the artery, and it shows where the artery and vein actually go. It goes from the heart into the kidneys and so on. So this is actually an organ system. Number 6, a photograph shows a plant cell nucleus measuring 2 millimeters across. If the magnification of the cell is 500, what is the actual size of the nucleus? Now, whenever a question comes like that, you should always draw, or like you can do that method. If you have other methods, you can do that, but this is the fastest method that I like to use. It is the I am triangle. So this can help you to know what type of calculations you should make. So over here, we're going to be choosing the A because they're asking for the actual size. So the actual size is equals to the image size over the magnification. So they said over here, a photograph shows a plant cell measuring 2 millimeters. So a photograph means the image. So we're going to be putting the 2 millimeters over here. And then the magnification, they have indicated that is 500. So it is going to be 2 divided by 500, so that's going to be 0.004, so that's going to be our answer. Number 7, by which process do oxygen and carbon dioxide move between cells and capillaries? Now we know that oxygen or any gas actually moves by the process called diffusion, so that's going to be our answer. Number 8, which process is involved in the uptake of glucose by the epithelial cells of the kidney tubules? Now we know that this is an example of active transport because this example was actually written in the syllabus. If you're going to check the Cambridge syllabus for 0610 biology, it is written in chapter 3 that the uptake of glucose by the epithelial cells are actually part of the active transport. So our answer is going to be A. Now, number 9, which element is found in proteins but not carbohydrates? So we know that proteins actually have nitrogen, and it is not like in the carbohydrates. This is the only element that is found in the proteins but not carbohydrates or fats, for example. So our answer is going to be C. Number 10, the sequence of bases present on one strand of a DNA molecule is shown. Which sequence shows the bases present on the opposite strand? Now we know that A One second. A actually pairs with T, and C pairs with G. Now, you don't have to know the full names, but you should know the A just pairs with a T and the C pairs with a G. So we have to look for a T, A. So let's just check which of the options have T, A, and A. Now, that is option number C. Okay, 11. Starch is digested by amylase in the mouth, but it's not digested in the stomach. What is the reason for this? Now, option A says that all starch digestion is completed in the mouth. Now, this is incorrect because we know that the mouth doesn't actually do all the process. There is just salivary amylase. There is also amylase in the secreted by the pancreas. So that is not all the digestion. So A can't be the answer. B says the pH in the stomach is not suitable for amylase to work. Now, this is correct because in the stomach the pH is very acidic. So amylase needs pH 7 to work. So the stomach acidic pH won't work. So that is going to be our answer, B. Number 12, which statement about an enzyme-controlled reaction is correct? Option A says, during the reaction, the substrate changes into product. Now, this is correct because we know that the substrate actually changes into products by the enzyme, and the substrate has to have a very complementary fit with the active site of the enzyme. So this is going to be the correct option. Now, option B won't work because they're saying the enzyme is gradually used up. We know that enzymes aren't used up, so this won't work. And C says the enzyme is slowly broken down during the reaction. Of course, this is incorrect. Enzymes are not used up. D says the higher the temperature, the slower the reaction. Now, this is incorrect because as we know that the higher the temperature, actually, there is more kinetic energy. 13. A plant with striped leaves was kept in bright light for 6 hours. A leaf was taken from the plant and the chlorophyll was removed. The leaf was then tested for starch using iodine. Which diagram showed the result of the test? Now, we know that white will turn into orange-brown by the iodine test. If you want to know more about it, you can check out my paper 6 video that I have done. Any white part will remain orange-brown because the color of the iodine is actually orange-brown. And any green will be converted into blue-black. So we have to check which part is the white that is going to be orange-brown and which part is the green. The outer part over here is actually the white, so it's going to be orange-brown, and in the middle it's green, so it has to be blue-black. So we should choose something that has blue-black in the middle, and in the outer parts it has orange-brown, so that is A. Now, number 14, the graph shows daily carbon dioxide uptake and transpiration by the plant. What can be concluded from this graph? Now, we know that here, when the stomata is closed, there is a lower rate of carbon dioxide uptake, and there is also lower transpiration. So when there is lower transpiration, that means that the stomata was closed. So let's read the options. More stomata are closed during the dark periods. Now, over here, we can see in the dark periods, which is about from hour 20 or hour 17, the stomata was actually opened because the carbon dioxide and the transpiration rates were increasing very much compared to the light hours. So this is incorrect. Now, let's check option B. More stomata are closed during the light periods. Now, we can see from the light periods, 8 a.m. until about maybe let's say 4 p.m., 5 p.m., there was a very large number of stomata closed because the transpiration and the carbon dioxide uptake was decreased at that time. So starting from about hour 17, the carbon dioxide and the transpiration were increased because it was getting darker outside. So that is going to be B for the answer. 15. Statements 1 to 4 describe stages in the development of chloria. what is the correct sequence of the 4 stages? Let's check if we're going to be starting with 1 or we're going to be starting with 4. Number 1 says chloride ions are secreted into the gut. Now, number 4 says toxins are produced by the pathogenic bacteria. Now, number 1 is not going to be correct because chloride ions are not going to be secreted out of nowhere. It should be stimulated by something. That is the toxins that are produced by the bacteria. So we're going to be choosing between C and D, not A and B. Now let's check what is correct, C or D. Now number C says 4 and then 1, which is chloride ions. Both of them say 4 and then 1. Now the difference is here. So let's check which is the correct one. Now C says there is 2 after 1. 2 is saying osmosis causes water to move into the gut. And then 3 says the infected person becomes dehydrated. Now, of course, osmosis will take place first and then the person will become dehydrated because as we know that if there is many chloride ions, it will decrease the water potential. So there will be osmosis causing the water to move into the gut from the blood, decreasing the water potential. So our answer will be C here. And of course, over here in D, it is also incorrect because how will the person become dehydrated and then the osmosis will take place? So this is definitely incorrect. Now 16, the diagram shows part of the human body. Which statements about organ X and Y is correct? A is saying that X absorbs more water from food than Y. Now we know that Y is the large intestine and X is actually the small intestine. So we know most water absorption actually takes place in the small intestine, not the large. So large intestine is just for like if there is excess water that wasn't absorbed in the small intestine. So A says X absorbs more water from food than Y, which is actually correct. So that's going to be our answer. 17. Which sequence describes the pathway taken by water as it moves through the plant? Now we know that it first starts off from the root hair cell, so we're going to be choosing between A and D. Now over here they're saying option A says root hair cell and then xylem and then the root cortex cell and then the mesophyll. Now this is incorrect because it's supposed to be the root cortex and then the xylem, so it's the other way around, which is actually D over here. Now 18, the diagram shows a plant at different times of the year. Now what is the role of the bulb during stage 1 and 2? Now let's just read the stages over here. At stage 1, at the start of the growing season, the plant uses the food reserves stored in the bulb for growth of the shoots and leaves. Now, this is stage 1. So, we know that in stage 1, the bulb is actually acting as a source because it has the food reserves and it's using the food reserves to get energy for the growth of the shoots and leaves. So, this is going to be a source. Now, we're going to be actually choosing between C and D for this question. So over here, let's check stage 2. Later in the season, the leaves of the plant photosynthesize and the food reserves in the bulb are replaced. Now over here, the plants are photosynthesizing, so that means that it is getting glucose and it's getting the oxygen and nutrients, and the food reserves are being replaced, which means they are growing. So they are the sink over here. So our answer will be C because, as I said, this is the sink because it's replacing or growing the food reserves. And over here, the bulb was containing the food reserves for the shoots to grow. 19. How does blood enter the heart? Now we know that blood enters the heart through veins called the vena cava. So we're going to be choosing between C and D. Now C says through the veins into the atria, and then D says through the veins into the ventricles. Now of course it's going to be into the atria because ventricles are down, not up, so the upper side is actually the atrium, so that's going to be C. 20. What is the sequence of organs that blood passes through during one circulation of the body of a fish? Now we know that first of all, it will start off from the heart, so we're not going to be choosing between B and Z. Now it will go from we know that the fish has a single circulatory system, not a double circulatory like us humans. So we're going to be choosing one that has just a single circuit, not a double circuit like humans. So that is A. C is incorrect because it's a double circulatory system over here. The heart is there twice, so that is incorrect. 21. A child is vaccinated against measles. After a period of time, the child is infected with the measles virus. The graph shows the concentration of measles antibodies in the child's bloodstream during this time. Which statement is consistent with the information in the graph? Now, over here, we can know that there was memory cells production somewhere, because after the child was infected again, there was a very high increase in the antibody concentration in the blood, as we can see here. And this is indicating that there is some sort of memory cells over here. So we know that the vaccination was indeed successful and it produced memory cells for the child. So let's read the options. After the vaccination, the child produced memory cells. Now this is correct. Why option B is incorrect? The child had passive immunity. Now this is incorrect because we know that vaccination provides active immunity, not passive, because it produces memory cells and it also provides active immunity, so it's not passive. Now C says the measles virus contains antibodies. This is incorrect. No virus has antibodies. And D said that the vaccination failed to protect the child. Now this is incorrect because at the end of the time over here there was a very high antibody concentration in the blood. So it protected the child and it produced antibodies to destroy the bacteria and destroy the virus. So it indeed protected the child. 22. Which sequence of changes takes place when we breathe in? Now we know when we breathe in, which is inhalation, the diaphragm contracts. So we're going to be choosing between A and B over here. Now A says the volume of the thorax increases and the pressure in the lungs decreases. Now this is correct because as we know that pressure and the volume are opposite to each other, so there cannot be a high volume and a high pressure. It's either to be volume that's low or the pressure that's low, so they can't be the same. It's the opposite. So that's why option B is incorrect, because both of them increases. No, one of them has to decrease or increase. So A is going to be our answer. 23. What is the link between muscle contraction, protein synthesis, and the maintenance of a constant body temperature? Now we know that all of these processes actually use energy, so that is going to be our answer. We know that these are some of the uses of the energy produced by respiration. So number 24. After vigorous exercise, an athlete continues to breathe deeply during the recovery period. During this recovery period, the oxygen depth is removed. Which reaction is used to remove the oxygen depth? Now we know that the lactic acid is actually anaerobically respired in the liver, not in the muscles. So our answer for this question will be A. Now question number 25. The diagram shows some organs in the human body. Which row matches the function to the correct organ? Now we know that excreting of carbon dioxide is done by the lungs, so we're going to be choosing between A and B. Now excreting urea is done by the kidneys, so our answer for this question will be B, because they say that the excretion of urea is done in the kidneys. Over here, this is the kidneys. Number 3. Now let's check produces urea. Is it correct or not? Producing or production of the urea is done in the liver. So the liver over here is labeled 2, so that is also correct. 26. What is the result of the release of adrenaline? Now we know adrenaline will actually increase the blood glucose concentration, and the breathing rate. So D is going to be our answer. 27. A person's skin looks more red in warm environment than it does in a cool environment. Which explanation is correct? Now we know in the hot environment there's going to be vasodilation, so there is going to be more blood flow to the skin, so the heat loss can occur. Now in the cool environment there is vasoconstriction, so the person will look more pale because there is no blood going on, there's no heat loss. So let's read the options. The arterioles supplying the capillaries in the skin vasodilate and less blood flows to the skin surface. So this is not what we need the hot environment. Now B says the arterioles supplying the capillaries in the skin vasodilate and more blood flows to the skin surface. Now this is correct. So this is the correct explanation of the skin, or what happens to the skin in the warm environment. 28. The diagram shows a plant next to a window. Which statement explains the plant's growth? Let's read the options. There is a higher concentration in oxygen in the cells on the shaded side of the root. This prevents elongation. Well, this is incorrect. It actually stimulates elongation, cell elongation. So our answer will be B over here because it says stimulates cell elongation, and we know that there is oxygen actually accumulates on the shaded areas and not the light or the not shaded areas. 29. The graph shows how smoking different numbers of cigarettes for different lengths of time affects the risk of lung cancer. Which conclusions are supported by the data in the graph? Now let's read the conclusions. Smoking more than 20 cigarettes per day always increases the risk of lung cancer more than smoking less than 20 cigarettes per day. Now they're saying that if you smoke more than 20 cigarettes per day, it will always increase the risk. So let's see over here. Now at 20, the risk was lower. So over here in the 20 to 29, the risk increased, and at 30 years and 39 years it increased. But over here in the 40 and 49, it actually kind of decreased, or it was the same. So it didn't always increase the risk. So this is incorrect. Now 2, smoking cigarettes for more years increases the risk of lung cancer. Now this is correct because as we moved on in the years, there was a very increased rate whether they are smoking more or less than 20 cigarettes per day. So 2 is correct. Number 3, smoking more than 20 cigarettes per day for more than 50 years has the highest risk of lung cancer. Now, more than 20 cigarettes per day for more than 50 years. So that is here. Now, this is correct. This is the highest size of the bar graph. So this is correct. So our answer is going to be D. Question number 30. The life cycle of aphids include both sexual and asexual reproduction. Which statement is correct? Now over here, we're going to first identify if Y is asexual or sexual reproduction, and the same for reproduction X. Now let's start with reproduction X. Over here, it shows that it comes from one parent, so that means it is asexual because in asexual reproduction it doesn't require gametes and it only can occur by one parent. So that's because the asexual reproduction depends on mitosis and not meiosis. So over here, this is going to be asexual. Now for reproduction Y, it's actually going to be sexual reproduction. That's because over here it required two parents, a male and a female. So it resulted in the formation of a fertilized egg. So that is proof that it requires gametes. So that is going to be actually sexual reproduction. So let's look at the options. Now, of course, Y isn't going to be asexual, it's actually sexual reproduction, so this is not going to work. We're going to be choosing between A or C. Now A says X shows asexual reproduction which produces genetic variation. Now this is incorrect because, as I said, asexual reproduction actually depends on the mitosis, which doesn't require gametes, so there is no genetic variation really involved in this. So it's going to produce genetically identical cells. So it's going to be C. 31. Modern agriculture methods often use artificial insemination to breed dairy cattle. Which statement describes the process of artificial insemination? Option A says sperm is collected from a bull and frozen. The sperm is later inserted into the vagina of a cow. Now, this is correct because we know that artificial insemination is actually using collected sperm from a donor or sperm from whatever, and it's inserted into the vagina of the animal or maybe a human. So this is how it goes. So this is really the process. So A is going to be the answer. Question number 32. The diagram shows the chromosomes in a cell from a species. Which statement is correct? Now over here, it shows that there is no cells that are like pairing together. It's just like strands alone on the cell over here. As we can see, there is no like double pairing or something. It's just like cells alone. So this shows that it's a haploid cell. So there is of course no pairs of chromosomes. So the answer is going to be C. 33. Some statements about mitosis are listed. Which statements are correct? Now, over here, let's read the statements. Cells divide and produce new cells to replace damaged tissues. Now, this is correct because, as we know, that mitosis is used in the repairing of damaged tissues and damaged skin. So, we're going to be saying that this is correct for now. Number 2, chromosomes are duplicated and the cell separates to form gametes. Now, no, mitosis isn't used in the formation of gametes. Actually, it is meiosis, so this is incorrect. 3, chromosomes are duplicated and the cell separates to form genetically identical cells. Now, this is correct, so we're going to be marking that as well. Mitosis is used in asexual reproduction. Now, this is correct, so the answer is going to be B. 34. Coat color in cattle is controlled by 2 codominant alleles. The genotype CR results in cattle with red color coat. Genotype CW results in cattle with white colored coat. Genotype CRCW results in a roan coat. These cattle have a mixture of red hairs and white hairs in their coat. A mating occurs between a red cow and a roan bull. What is the expected ratio of the coat color in the offspring? Now, for the red, we're going to be crossing the red, which is over here CR and CR, and the roan is the heterozygous CRCW. So that is going to give us a CR, and a CW, and then it's going to give us another CR, and another CRCW. So that is going to be a 50-50. It's going to give us 50%. It's going to give us 50% roan color and 50% red color. So that's going to be C. 35. Which feature would help a plant to survive in a dry environment? Now we know that plants that live in dry environments are the xerophytes, so we're going to look for an adaptation over here that is similar to the xerophytes. Large leaves, now this is incorrect because it's going to be losing too much water. Many stomata, now of course again this is going to result in the excessive loss of water. C, small roots. Now this is very incorrect because small roots will not allow the plant to absorb the water from the roots efficiently. So our only answer is going to be D because thick waxy cuticles will increase the diffusion distance, so there is minimized transpiration. 36. What occurs as a result of artificial selection? Now we know artificial selection is the selection pressure that is done by humans to animals or whatever. So let's see. 36A, antibiotic resistance in bacteria. Now this is incorrect. This is actually natural selection. Now B, disease resistant crops. Now this is correct because in this disease resistant crops, they are crossing genetically modified plants. So genetically modified plants are crossed with normal plants, so these are all like a result of the human actions. So B is going to be our answer. 37. Which type of energy is passed from organism to organism in a food chain? Now we know that chemical energy is the energy that is transferred between an animal when it eats another animal, and the heat energy is the excess energy that is lost to the environment by an animal. So it's going to be chemical energy and not heat energy. Now question number 38. The diagram shows a food web. How many organisms feed at more than one trophic level? Now they're asking about an organism that actually feeds at more than one trophic level. For example, it feeds at secondary consumer and it's also a tertiary consumer at the same time. So let's check. I've done some labeling over here and I found that the brown trout is actually both a tertiary and a secondary consumer. Let me show you how I have got this. Now over here we know that any plant is going to be a producer. So after the producer, I've went to the primary over here from the freshwater shrimp, and then I've went to from the freshwater shrimp I went to the brown. So now it's a secondary consumer. Now if we went from the microscopic again into the freshwater and then into the dragonfly and then into the brown, then the brown trout is going to be actually a tertiary, not a secondary. So at the same time it's going to be like tertiary and secondary consumers, so the answer is going to be B. 39. Bacteria can be used to make human proteins. Which statement explains why this is possible when a human gene is placed into a bacterial cell? So they're saying that bacteria are able to reproduce quickly. Now this is not like an advantage for like this is not specific for the bacteria, so this is not going to be correct. Bacteria are very small organisms. This is not going to matter when a human gene is going to be placed into the bacterial cell. Now this is incorrect. C, bacteria contain genetic material in plasmids. Now the genetic material is not actually in plasmids, so the answer is not going to be C. Now D says bacteria have the same genetic code as humans. Now this is the correct option because as we know that bacteria has universal genetic codes. So that means that any genetic code can be placed into the bacteria and it will understand it. So D is going to be the answer. 40. The process of eutrophication begins with the increased availability of nitrate ions and other ions in the water. The process involved in eutrophication are listed. What is the correct sequence? Now we know that we should be starting off with 3, rapid growth of producers, and not 4, because how will the oxygen concentration decrease in the water without something decreasing it? So we're going to be choosing between A and B. Now A says rapid growth of producers, and then it is followed by increased death of producers due to lack of light. Now this is correct because as we know that if there is increased growth of the plants on top of the water, is going to block out the light for the plant at the bottom, so this is correct. Now increased aerobic respiration by decomposers because there is increased death, and then it's going to be doing aerobic respiration and producing carbon dioxide and decreasing the oxygen levels because they're going to be using it, the decomposers. So 4, so that is actually A. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like my videos if you have learned something new or if you have enjoyed this video in order to support my channel.